Have you ever stopped to really watch a teenager today? No, seriously. Stop and look around you. What you see might shock you more than you can imagine. While you're watching this video, millions of Gen Z kids are experiencing something that has never happened before in human history. We're talking about depression rates that have tripled in just 15 years, anxiety levels that make previous generations look carefree, sleep patterns so destroyed that 4 hours of rest has become normal. But that's just the beginning. You'll discover how social media has created the first generation addicted to validation from strangers. How screens have replaced parents as the primary influence in young lives. How digital approval has become more important than real relationships. The data you're about to see will reveal why psychologists are calling this the cruelest social experiment ever conducted on human beings. Why mental health crises are at record highs. Why eating disorders spread through apps faster than any virus. Why emergency room visits for panic attacks have skyrocketed among teens. You'll learn how an entire generation forgot basic human skills like face-to-face conversation, handling boredom, and processing emotions without a device. How they've become lab rats in a massive experiment designed to extract their attention and sell it to the highest bidder. If you have children, nephews, nieces, or simply care about the future of our society, you need to understand what's really happening to these kids and what we can still do to save them. 1. The silent epidemic nobody wants to talk about. Right now, as you sit there watching this, 1 in 4 teenagers is struggling with something that would have been unthinkable just 20 years ago. Mental health professionals are calling it the fastest growing crisis of our time, yet most parents don't even know it exists. We're not talking about the usual teenage problems your parents worried about. This goes deeper, much deeper. What we're seeing is a complete rewiring of how young brains process reality, emotions, and human connection. The numbers are staggering, and they're getting worse every single month. Depression rates among teens have skyrocketed by over 300% since 2007. Anxiety disorders have exploded beyond anything we've ever recorded. But here's what makes this truly terrifying. These aren't just temporary mood swings or typical adolescent angst. These are clinical diagnosed conditions that are fundamentally changing how an entire generation experiences life. Sleep deprivation has become so common that doctors now consider it normal for teenagers to function on 4 to 5 hours of sleep per night. Their circadian rhythms are completely destroyed. They're living in a constant state of exhaustion that affects every aspect of their cognitive development. Memory formation, decision-making, emotional regulation, all compromised. Hospital emergency rooms are reporting record numbers of teenagers arriving in complete panic attacks. Kids as young as 12 are being rushed in because they literally cannot breathe. Their hearts are racing and they feel like they're dying. These panic episodes are happening during school, at home, even while they sleep. The medical staff doesn't know what to do because this wasn't supposed to happen to children, but it gets worse. Eating disorders are spreading like wildfire through social networks. What used to be isolated cases are now coordinated campaigns of destruction. Young people are teaching each other dangerous behaviors through apps and group chats. They're creating secret communities where they compete to see who can go the longest without eating, who can lose the most weight the fastest. The most heartbreaking part? These kids think this is normal. They believe everyone their age is going through the same thing. They have no reference point for what healthy teenage life should look like because they've never experienced it. To them, waking up with dread every morning is just part of growing up. Feeling overwhelmed by simple tasks like choosing what to wear or what to eat for breakfast has become their baseline. Teachers are reporting that students can't focus for more than 30 seconds at a time. Attention spans have been shredded to pieces. Kids are physically unable to complete assignments that would have been considered easy just a decade ago. They start reading a paragraph, and their minds immediately wander. They begin a math problem and forget what they were doing halfway through. Parents are desperate. They're watching their children transform into strangers right before their eyes. Happy, curious kids are becoming withdrawn, irritable, and completely disconnected from family life. Dinner conversations have disappeared. Eye contact has become rare. Simple questions like, "How was your day?" are met with silence or anger. The truly scary part is how quickly this is spreading. It's not affecting just certain types of kids or certain neighborhoods. This is hitting every demographic, every social class, every type of family. Rich kids, poor kids, kids with involved parents, kids with absent parents. Nobody is immune to what's happening. Medical professionals are overwhelmed. Therapy waiting lists that used to be weeks long are now stretching to months. Psychiatric medication prescriptions for minors have increased by over 500% in just the last decade. We're medicating children at rates that would have been considered insane by previous generations of doctors. What makes this epidemic particularly dangerous is how invisible it is. These kids have learned to hide their struggles behind carefully crafted social media posts and fake smiles. They've mastered the art of appearing fine while falling apart inside. Parents often don't realize anything is wrong until it's almost too late. 2. The addiction that's destroying young minds. Picture this. A 13-year-old girl checks her phone 270 times per day. That's once every 3.5 minutes during her waking hours. She's not texting friends or calling family. She's compulsively opening apps, scrolling through feeds and refreshing screens in an endless loop that she cannot control. This isn't just a bad habit. This is a genuine addiction that's rewiring her brain in ways we're only beginning to understand. The same neural pathways that activate when someone uses cocaine are lighting up every time she gets a notification. Her dopamine system has been completely hijacked by algorithms designed by some of the smartest engineers in the world. These apps aren't accidentally addictive. They're intentionally designed to create dependency. Teams of neuroscientists, behavioral psychologists, and data analysts work around the clock to make these platforms as irresistible as possible. They study exactly how long to wait before sending a notification to maximize the dopamine hit. They test thousands of different color combinations to see which ones keep users engaged the longest. The average teenager now spends over 9 hours per day looking at screens. Think about that for a moment. 9 hours. That's more time than they spend sleeping, more time than they spend in school, more time than they spend with their families, friends, and every other activity combined. Their entire existence has been reduced to staring at glowing rectangles. But here's what's really happening inside their brains during those 9 hours. Every swipe, every tap, every scroll is triggering a tiny release of dopamine. Over time, this constant stimulation burns out their natural reward system. Activities that should feel good, like playing sports, reading books, or having conversations, start to feel boring and unrewarding because they can't compete with the artificial highs of digital stimulation. Their ability to experience genuine pleasure from real-world activities is being systematically destroyed. A sunset that would have amazed them as children now feels dull. A joke that would have made them laugh out loud barely registers. Physical affection from family members feels uncomfortable because it's not delivering the instant gratification they've become accustomed to. The withdrawal symptoms are real and severe. When these kids are separated from their devices, even for short periods, they experience genuine physical discomfort. Their hands shake, they feel nauseous, they become irritable and aggressive. Some report feeling like they can't breathe properly. These are the same symptoms experienced by people withdrawing from drugs or alcohol. Schools that have tried to implement phone-free policies report that students go into something resembling panic mode. They can't concentrate on lessons because they're constantly worried about what they might be missing online. Some kids literally cannot function in an environment where they don't have access to their devices. They've lost the ability to be present in their own lives. The most disturbing part is how this addiction affects their sleep. These kids are staying awake until 2, 3, or 4 in the morning scrolling through apps. But it's not because they want to be awake. Their brains have been trained to seek out one more hit of dopamine, one more notification, one more piece of content. They physically cannot put the phone down, even when they're exhausted. When they finally do fall asleep, they're keeping their phones right next to their heads. Many sleep with their devices under their pillows or clutched in their hands. They wake up multiple times throughout the night to check for messages or updates. Their sleep cycles are completely destroyed, which affects everything from their immune systems to their emotional stability. The content they're consuming during these marathon scrolling sessions isn't innocent entertainment. Algorithms are feeding them increasingly extreme material designed to provoke strong emotional reactions. They're being exposed to violence, sexual content, and disturbing imagery that their developing minds aren't equipped to process. But they can't look away because the algorithm knows exactly how to keep them hooked. Parents feel helpless because they don't understand the technology well enough to fight it. They try taking phones away, but their kids become so distressed that many parents give up and hand the devices back. They don't realize they're dealing with a genuine addiction that requires professional intervention, not just better parenting. The tech companies know exactly what they're doing. Internal documents have revealed that they've studied the harmful effects of their products on children and decided to keep pushing forward anyway. Profit margins are more important than the mental health of an entire generation. They've turned children into products to be sold to advertisers, and they're getting rich while kids suffer. What's most heartbreaking is watching these young people lose years of their lives to this addiction. Time they should be spending learning, growing, and forming real relationships is being wasted on meaningless digital consumption. They're missing out on the experiences that create lasting memories and build character. Instead, they're living in an artificial world that offers nothing but empty stimulation and manufactured drama. By the way, if you're curious to break free from the mental overload that's consuming an entire generation, check out the SIM Method ebook. It's a concise guide that can help you regain clarity and emotional strength in just 5 minutes a day. The link is in the first pinned comment below. 3. Why they'd rather die than live without it. Imagine telling a teenager they have to give up their phone for just 1 week, not forever, just 7 days. The reaction you'll get is pure terror, not annoyance, not frustration, genuine fear like you just threatened to cut off their oxygen supply. Because in their minds, that's exactly what you're doing. These kids have reached a point where digital connection feels more essential than food, water, or shelter. They would rather go hungry than miss a single notification. They would rather skip sleep than put their phone in another room. The idea of being disconnected from their online world creates the same panic response that our ancestors felt when facing life-threatening danger. This isn't teenage drama or exaggeration. Brain scans show that when heavy social media users are separated from their devices, the same regions that activate during physical pain light up like Christmas trees. Their brains literally interpret digital disconnection as a form of torture. The fear is real, the anxiety is real, and the desperation is real. But why has this connection become so intense? The answer lies in how these platforms have replaced every other source of meaning in their lives. Their self-worth is now entirely dependent on likes, comments, shares, and follows. A post that doesn't get enough engagement feels like a personal rejection by everyone they know. A story that gets ignored makes them question their entire existence. They've created online personas that require constant maintenance and validation. Every photo must be perfectly edited. Every caption must be clever and relatable. Every story must show them living their best life. The pressure to maintain this fake perfection is exhausting, but they can't stop because their entire identity is built on these digital foundations. The fear of missing out has evolved into something much more dangerous. It's no longer about missing a party or a conversation. It's about missing their entire lives. In their minds, if something isn't documented and shared online, it didn't really happen. Experiences that aren't posted feel meaningless and wasted. Reality has become less important than the digital representation of reality. They're living in constant comparison mode. Every moment of their day is measured against the highlight reels of everyone else online. A normal Tuesday afternoon feels like failure when compared to the vacation photos, success stories, and perfect moments that fill their feeds. They've lost the ability to appreciate their own lives because they're always seeing someone else's better version. The algorithms feeding them content know exactly how to keep them desperate for more. They're shown just enough positive reinforcement to keep hoping, mixed with just enough rejection and negativity to keep them insecure. It's like a slot machine that occasionally pays out just enough to keep the player pulling the lever, but never enough to satisfy them completely. Their relationships with family and friends have become secondary to their relationship with their devices. They can be sitting in the same room as people who love them, but they're emotionally present with strangers on the internet. Parents try to connect with them, but the phone always wins. Real conversations feel slow and boring compared to the rapid-fire stimulation of social media. The most heartbreaking part is watching them choose digital validation over real opportunities. They'll skip family gatherings to stay home and scroll. They'll ignore friends who want to hang out because maintaining their online presence feels more important. They're sacrificing genuine relationships for artificial ones that exist only in pixels and data. When their devices break or get taken away, they experience what can only be described as grief. They mourn the loss of their digital lives like someone died. Some report feeling like they're floating through life with no anchor, no purpose, no connection to anything that matters. The real world feels colorless and empty compared to the vibrant, exciting digital realm they've become addicted to. Sleep becomes impossible without the comfort of scrolling. They use their phones like digital security blankets, needing that constant stimulation to feel safe and calm. The silence and darkness of bedtime creates anxiety that can only be soothed by the glow of a screen and the endless stream of content. Even when they recognize that their phone use is problematic, they feel powerless to change it. They make promises to themselves to cut back, delete apps, or take breaks, but they always return. The pull is too strong, the fear of disconnection too intense. They're trapped in a cycle they desperately want to escape but don't know how to break. 4. The cruelest social experiment in history. What if someone told you that a group of scientists decided to take an entire generation of children and use them as test subjects in the largest psychological experiment ever conducted? What if they did this without asking permission from parents, without informed consent, and without any safety protocols to protect the kids from harm? You'd probably think that sounds like something from a dystopian nightmare. But that's exactly what's happening right now. Big tech companies have turned every child with a smartphone into a lab rat, and they're collecting data on how to manipulate young minds more effectively every single day. The experiment started innocently enough. Social media platforms promised to connect people and make the world more open and connected. But behind the scenes, teams of engineers were designing features specifically to create addiction and dependency. They studied how to make notifications more irresistible, how to time content delivery for maximum impact, and how to keep users engaged for as long as possible. These aren't regular engineers building useful tools. These are behavioral scientists who understand exactly how the human brain responds to different types of stimulation. They know that intermittent reinforcement creates stronger addiction than constant rewards. They know that social rejection triggers the same pain pathways as physical injury. They know that adolescent brains are particularly vulnerable to these manipulation techniques. The platforms collect thousands of data points on every user. They know when kids wake up, when they go to sleep, how long they look at each post, what makes them scroll faster, what makes them pause, what makes them share content. They track eye movements, facial expressions, heart rate, and even tiny changes in typing patterns. Every interaction provides more information about how to hook them deeper. But here's the truly evil part. They use this data to create personalized addiction protocols for each individual child. The algorithm learns exactly what type of content makes each kid most likely to keep scrolling. For some, it's funny videos. For others, it's drama and conflict. For many, it's content that makes them feel insecure and inadequate because that drives more engagement. The platforms deliberately show kids content that they know will upset them because negative emotions create stronger responses than positive ones. They've discovered that angry, sad, or anxious users spend more time on the app trying to regulate their emotions through more scrolling. So they feed kids a steady diet of content designed to keep them in negative emotional states. They target children during their most vulnerable moments. The algorithms can detect when someone is feeling lonely, depressed, or insecure based on their usage patterns and the type of content they engage with. Instead of showing them uplifting material during these moments, the platforms flood them with content that makes them feel worse because it's more profitable. The timing of notifications is carefully calculated to disrupt healthy behaviors. They send alerts during homework time, during family dinners, and even during sleep hours because they've learned that interrupting other activities increases dependency on the platform. They're literally training kids to prioritize digital engagement over real-life responsibilities and relationships. Different features are tested on different groups of children to see which ones create stronger addictive responses. Some kids get more likes on their posts to keep them posting. Others get fewer likes to make them try harder. Some see mostly positive content from friends, while others see mostly negative content. The kids have no idea they're being manipulated differently based on their psychological profiles. The most disturbing experiments involve deliberately triggering mental health crises to study how users respond. They'll show vulnerable kids content about depression, anxiety, or body image issues to see how it affects their behavior on the platform. They're literally making kids sicker to collect better data on how sick kids use social media. The companies have internal research showing that their products cause depression, anxiety, and other mental health problems in children. But instead of fixing these issues, they use the research to make their platforms even more effective at capturing attention. They've decided that profits are more important than the well-being of millions of children. Parents and teachers are kept in the dark about how these systems actually work. The companies use vague terms like community building and connecting people to hide the sophisticated manipulation techniques they're employing. Most adults have no idea that their children are being subjected to individualized psychological manipulation designed by teams of experts. The experiment has no end date and no safety measures. There's no institutional review board overseeing the research. There's no process for obtaining informed consent. There are no protocols for stopping the experiment if it causes too much harm. The tech companies are free to do whatever they want to children's minds, and they're using that freedom to extract maximum profit regardless of the cost. What makes this experiment particularly cruel is that the subjects can't opt out. Social media has become so integrated into teenage social life that kids who don't participate become isolated and excluded. They're forced to choose between psychological manipulation and social exile. It's not really a choice at all. 5. When screens became the new mom and dad. Walk into any restaurant today and look around. You'll see something that would have horrified parents just 20 years ago, but now seems completely normal. Entire families sitting together in complete silence, each person staring at their own glowing screen. The parents are checking work emails and scrolling through feeds while their kids are lost in games and videos. Nobody's talking, nobody is connecting. The screens have become the most important family member at the table. This isn't just about bad manners or changing social norms. Something fundamental has shifted in how children are being raised. For the first time in human history, kids are spending more time interacting with devices than with the adults who are supposed to be guiding them through life. Screens have quietly taken over the most important job in society, raising the next generation. The average child now gets less than 30 minutes of undivided attention from their parents each day. 30 minutes. That's barely enough time for a meaningful conversation, let alone the deep emotional connection that children need to develop properly. The rest of their waking hours are spent either staring at screens themselves or competing with screens for their parents' attention. Parents have handed over the responsibility of entertaining, educating, and even comforting their children to devices. When a kid gets bored, instead of teaching them how to handle that uncomfortable feeling, parents immediately offer a phone or tablet. When a child gets upset, instead of helping them process their emotions, they're given a screen to distract them. When kids have questions about life, instead of having real conversations, they're told to look it up online. This digital babysitting might seem harmless, but it's creating children who have never learned basic emotional regulation skills. They don't know how to sit with uncomfortable feelings. They don't know how to entertain themselves with their own thoughts and imagination. They don't know how to work through problems without immediately seeking external stimulation and distraction. The screens are teaching kids values and lessons that their parents would never intentionally pass on. Social media algorithms are showing them that popularity matters more than character. Video games are teaching them that violence is an acceptable way to solve problems. Online content is exposing them to adult themes and situations that they're not emotionally ready to understand. But the screens don't just influence what kids learn, they're changing how their brains develop. Children need face-to-face interaction with caring adults to develop proper social and emotional skills. They need to see facial expressions, hear tone of voice, and feel physical comfort to learn how human relationships work. Screens can't provide any of these crucial developmental experiences. Kids are learning to read digital interfaces better than they can read human faces. They can navigate complex apps and games with ease, but they struggle to understand when someone is sad, angry, or needs help. They're becoming fluent in emoji, but losing the ability to interpret real emotions in real people. The constant availability of digital entertainment has made children completely intolerant of boredom. Previous generations learned creativity and problem-solving skills during quiet, unstimulated moments. Kids today never experience true boredom because there's always another video to watch, another game to play, another app to explore. Their brains never get the downtime necessary for creative thinking and self-reflection. Parents are struggling with their own screen addictions and modeling unhealthy relationships with technology. Kids watch their mothers and fathers constantly checking phones, scrolling through feeds, and choosing digital engagement over family time. Children learn more from what they observe than what they're told, and what they're observing is that screens are more important than people. The dinner table, once the sacred space for family bonding and conversation, has become just another place to consume digital content. Instead of sharing stories about their day, families are sharing funny videos they found online. Instead of discussing problems and working through conflicts together, everyone retreats into their own digital bubbles where real conversation can't intrude. Bedtime routines that used to involve reading stories, singing songs, and having quiet conversations have been replaced by kids falling asleep to the glow of screens. Parents are too tired from their own digital consumption to provide the calm, nurturing presence that children need to feel safe and loved as they drift off to sleep. When children do try to get their parents' attention, they're often told to wait because mom or dad is busy with something on their phone. Kids are learning that they're less important than whatever is happening in the digital world. They're developing attention-seeking behaviors and emotional problems because their basic need for connection and validation isn't being met by the adults in their lives. The most heartbreaking part is that many parents don't even realize what's happening. They think they're being good parents by providing their kids with the latest technology and unlimited access to information and entertainment. They don't understand that what children actually need is time, attention, and emotional presence from the adults who love them. 6. The generation that forgot how to be human. Picture trying to have a conversation with a teenager today. You ask them a simple question, and they give you a one-word answer while never looking up from their phone. You try to make eye contact, but their eyes dart around the room like they're searching for an escape route. You attempt to share a story or joke, but they seem physically uncomfortable with the silence and pauses that make real conversation possible. This isn't just teenage attitude or normal adolescent behavior. An entire generation is losing the fundamental social skills that humans have relied on for thousands of years. They're becoming strangers to their own species, more comfortable interacting with screens than with the flesh and blood people standing right in front of them. Basic human behaviors that previous generations took for granted are now rare and uncomfortable for many young people. Making eye contact feels awkward and invasive. Sitting in silence feels unbearable. Having a conversation without checking their phone every few minutes seems impossible. They've forgotten how to simply be present with another person. The art of small talk has completely disappeared. These kids don't know how to make casual conversation with cashiers, teachers, or neighbors. They can't ask for directions, order food without an app, or handle simple social interactions that require speaking to strangers. They're living in a world full of people, but have no idea how to connect with any of them. Their ability to read nonverbal communication has been severely damaged. Humans normally learn to interpret facial expressions, body language, and tone of voice through constant practice during childhood and adolescence. But kids who spend most of their time looking at screens miss out on thousands of hours of this crucial learning. They can't tell when someone is joking, when someone is upset, or when someone needs help. Even their closest friendships lack the depth and intimacy that previous generations experienced. They think they're staying connected through texts and social media posts, but they're actually becoming more isolated and lonely than ever. They share surface-level information about their lives, but never learn to have the deep, vulnerable conversations that create real bonds between people. Physical affection has become almost impossible for many of them. Hugs feel weird. Holding hands seems outdated. Sitting close to someone without a screen between them creates anxiety. They've lost touch with the basic human need for physical comfort and connection. Their bodies have forgotten how good it feels to be close to other people. They don't know how to handle conflict or disagreement in person. Online, they can block, mute, or simply ignore people who upset them. In real life, they have no skills for working through problems, expressing their feelings appropriately, or finding compromises. They either avoid conflict entirely or explode in anger because they never learned the middle ground of healthy disagreement. The simple pleasure of doing nothing with other people has been lost completely. Previous generations could sit on a porch, walk around the neighborhood, or drive in a car together without needing constant entertainment. Today's kids feel anxious and bored if they're not being constantly stimulated. They can't enjoy the quiet companionship that forms the foundation of deep relationships. Their attention spans have been shredded to the point where they can't follow longer conversations or stories. They need information delivered in quick, bite-sized pieces with visual stimulation to maintain interest. They interrupt constantly, change subjects randomly, and seem incapable of focusing on one topic long enough to really understand it or explore it deeply. They've developed a fear of vulnerability that makes authentic connection impossible. Sharing real feelings, admitting mistakes, or showing weakness feels too risky because they've learned that everything can be screenshot, shared, and used against them later. They keep their real selves hidden behind carefully constructed online personas and never let anyone see who they really are. The younger kids are even worse off because they're growing up without any memory of what normal human interaction looks like. They think the way their older siblings and parents behave is how people have always related to each other. They have no reference point for what they're missing, no understanding of how much richer and more satisfying real human connection can be. Many of them are developing social anxiety so severe that simple interactions like ordering food or asking for help become overwhelming challenges. They would rather go hungry than speak to a server. They would rather fail a class than ask a teacher for clarification. They're choosing isolation over the temporary discomfort of human interaction. The most tragic part is that they don't even realize what they've lost. They think this shallow digital way of relating to others is normal and sufficient. They don't understand that humans are designed to connect deeply with each other, to share emotions and experiences in ways that screens can never replicate. They're living half-lives and don't even know it. As you finish watching this video, take a moment to look around you. Really look. Notice the young people in your life, your kids, your students, your neighbors. Behind their screens and carefully crafted smiles, an entire generation is silently drowning in a digital ocean that promises connection but delivers isolation. The question isn't whether this crisis is real. The evidence is overwhelming. The question is what you're going to do about it. Because while the tech companies count their profits and the algorithms continue their relentless manipulation, real human beings are losing their childhood, their mental health, and their fundamental humanity. The future doesn't have to look like this, but only if we act now. The clock is ticking, and an entire generation is depending on us to remember what it means to be human.